At 10 years old, today's guest was reselling golf balls at his local golf course. Just 15 years later, he was in the C-suite of a billion-dollar company. By every measure of success, Alex Sanfilippo had made it, but something felt off inside. He ended up walking away, but he didn't walk away because it was failing. He walked away because what felt good he knew could have been great. I'm Jack Wagoner, and this is the Grateful Podcast, where we dive into the stories of some of the world's most successful and joyful individuals to see how being grateful for where they were ended up getting them to where they wanted to be. In this episode, Alex Sanfilippo and I talk about how curiosity can be both a gift and a trap, how silence reveals who you really are, and how faith, discipline, and gratitude reveal parts of you that ambition alone can't. Alex shares how the 2008 financial crisis made him lose everything, and how this turmoil gave him faith, which gave him direction, and how that eventually led into the creation of PodMatch, his new project that's putting $1 million in the hands of podcasters. This is a story about how curiosity became purpose. It's about losing comfort to find a calling, and how you can sacrifice the good for the great. Before we get into this, I would like to preface two things. One, I had some microphone issues during this conversation, so I very much apologize for the sound quality. It is not normally like this if you're new, and if you're not new, you would know that I normally hold myself to very high standards, and normally I might not even publish this episode because of the sound quality, but I think that the conversation was so valuable that you really do need to hear this. Secondly, I would just love if you guys could go down to the link in the description and consider donating $5 to the Grateful Podcast so that I can keep building a better platform for you guys with more amazing guests and less technical issues such as the sound quality. It would also allow me to be more consistent in publishing reels on social media that would allow me to grow the reach of the show and continue making it better for everybody listening and watching. All right. Let's get into the show. Alex Sanfilippo, welcome to the Grateful Podcast.
Jack, thank you so much for having me, man. Really excited to be here.
I'm super grateful that you're on. And where I want to start is that this year, podcasting, it's nearly a $33 billion industry. And 10 years from now, it's projected to 11x, being closer to 360 billion. And you're positioned directly in the middle of this growth. However, before we delve into why all that's happening, I really want to discuss your journey getting here and reaching this point at the center of a booming industry. You're putting $1 million back into podcasters' hands, but your entrepreneurial journey, it started when you were 10 years old reselling golf balls, and it's taken you on a ton of different paths since then. So what has been the most important trait you've had that's taken you exactly where you're supposed to be right now?
I think that first off, like 10 years old selling like used golf balls on a golf course, like it was fun. That was like definitely my introduction to being an entrepreneur, but like for sure not like a legal business. Like I never paid taxes on that or anything like that, right? But since that first day, I can say that I was curious. And so I believe that curiosity is very important for anyone who wants to be an entrepreneur. You have to actually be interested in what it is that you're trying to do. And I think a lot of people are like, well, I'm interested in making money. Does that count? And the reality is I don't think so. Because like there still has to be some sort of mechanism that you do on a repeated basis in order to actually earn that, right? And it has to interest you. And so for me, from that young age, I was just interested in like, okay, how do I like find enough golf balls to sell to golfers on a Saturday morning, right? Like, and how do I get help because they have to be cleaned? How do we do that, right? Like, I was just curious, and I kind of let curiosity kind of guide me, especially at a young age. I think that's really healthy because it stirs up creativity. And so for me, like being interested in something, being like involved in it, right, can really breed this curiosity that leads to some sort of creative solution to whatever problem is that you discover along the way. And I think that that's really important to always make sure that's kind of at the core because that's where your passion is stirred from. Oh man, I can't hear you anymore. There we go.
There we go. So funny tech difficulties, but it's all right. It makes the conversation more real. The curiosity, I think that's one of the things I think about the most in my life. But I also see how it can lead me astray. It can lead me to become distracted. So how have you focused your curiosity to use it as a more, I guess, powerful weapon rather than dispersing weakly?
Jack, that's a great insight. It really is. And I think that too many of us, we allow ourselves to be curious with everything, but the reality is you do have to pick a lane. And so for me, at one point, it was golf balls, and then it was doing some tech stuff, and then it was getting into real estate, and then eventually aerospace and podcasting. Right? It's kind of like been my whole journey. But I just learned that I had to stay focused on something. And because the reality is, like, there's a lot of us, a bunch of things look interesting to us, right? Like we want to try all the different things. And to some extent that's okay, especially at first when you're just kind of figuring out what you want. It's not like I want to do this, I'm going to do it. And then it's like, okay, well, what if you end up hating it, right? Like that's where curiosity is beautiful to let you do that. But once you decide this is my lane, you need to build some guardrails around that to say, okay, this is my focus. And now any sort of curiosity I have, any sort of passion I develop through that creativity that I'm stirring up is going to be really focused in this one lane. And for me, I always think of the word focus as an acronym, which stands for follow one course until successful. Focus, follow one course until successful. And so for me, I get into that lane and I can be very hyper focused, which has not always been the case, but I've learned to say no to pretty much everything except for the thing that I said yes to. There's the old quote that says with every yes, we have to have 1,000 no's behind it, right? Every yes has to be protected by 1,000 no's. And the reality is that's what it takes in order to really go deep with something. So we can't just be curious, as you're saying, and just kind of go broad with a bunch of things. No, you got to pick one thing and get really, really curious, become the most curious person ever on that one thing to go really deep, stick with it consistently, and say no to everything else. And listen, at 10 years old, I didn't know that, right? Like, and even at 18 years old, I didn't know that. It took me a long time to really figure that out. And I think it's actually harder now than it ever was, because even back then, like, I got my first smartphone, I think I was probably 19 or 20. It was like when iPhone came on the scene. And so like before that, like it was harder to get distracted. It really was. Like when I was focused on something, there was very few things in my life around me that could be like, oh, well, I could also do this. But now in today's world, I mean, people I talk to, the only thing holding them back is their inability to be self-disciplined, to say no and turn everything off except for the thing they know that they need to focus on. And the thing is, they already know they need to, but they're like, but I want to try these 10 tools first because they're new and they look like they're a lot of fun. It's like, okay, well, is that getting you any closer to the goal that you have? If no, then you need to find a way to turn it off and make it disappear, right? Like it's not worth our effort or our time to explore things just to explore them. And I think that that's one of the biggest things that's holding us back in today's world. And I'm grateful to have learned this years ago and now to not really let that in the way I used to, at least.
I think it must have been very interesting to grow up without all of that weaponization of curiosity because curious people, while they have a great advantage if they learn to harness it, I think that nowadays they're also at a disadvantage because they're much more likely to become distracted, to have that curiosity used against them by the people that are trying to make money and profit off of attention. I think the quote by Bruce Lee encapsulates it the best. I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks one time, but the man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times. I always try to think about that because it's a hard thing when you're young and when you're starting out. You don't want to narrow yourself down too much because there is so much in life. But it's like once you fill up one basket with your eggs, then you can go and use what you learned from that to fill up another basket. That seems to be kind of what you did in your life.
Yeah. I mean, pivoting is kind of the word that I use to describe what you just mentioned there. And yeah, absolutely. Like, how'd I go from golf balls to like, to podcasting, right? Like there's even more extremes in there. Like right before podcasting, I was in the aerospace industry for 15 years. But there is the importance of understanding when it's time, a season. Like it's important to pivot when the time is right. And the thing is, it's not when it gets tough, because a lot of people are like, oh, I need to pivot because this is getting difficult now. It's like, no, there's a thing called the law of diminishing return. So you're curious about something, you're learning, you're passionate about it. At some point, that gets a lot harder. Like when you first start learning on a new topic, you learn really fast. Like you go from knowing nothing to knowing like a lot, probably above average, like almost overnight. But then going from like above average to being like a master level takes a lot longer. And then from master level to like the best in the world at something takes forever, it feels like, right? And some people are like, oh, got to pivot. This is getting really difficult. It's like, okay, well, hold on now. Is it really time to pivot? And I believe that, again, that's something I had to learn the hard way, but it's something that's helped set me aside, is that I don't say, oh, time to get out of this. It's just too much. I've exhausted my efforts here. But so I know, like, hey, no, that's when I should probably put my head down. It means I'm getting close. At the same time, I've done enough of my own self-reflecting. That's something I do quarterly to make sure I'm on track. Because there's one thing I've learned, that especially entrepreneurs, creatives, people that that have a lot of ideas and stuff like that, we get off course really quick without realizing it, right? Which really, I came from the aerospace industry. It's not much different than that. An autopilot exists in a plane because if it's not making thousands of corrections along the way, your plane ends up miles away from where it was supposed to be. But that's why every few seconds it's checking, are we still on course? No, slight course correct. And so that's what I think reflecting does, is it says, okay, I'm reflecting. Am I still going the right direction? Is this getting difficult because that's the phase I'm in? Or is it because this is the wrong thing? And then really sitting down and getting real with that, that's what leads to self-mastery. That's what leads to self-discovery. And that's where the self-discipline really comes in to say, this is enough, or no, I need to double down. That takes self-discipline. Both are really hard decisions to make. But I have seen so many people quit what I call 3 feet from gold. They've been digging all day and there's the gold 3 feet below them, right? But they stop because they're like, oh, the ground's getting harder. It's probably the wrong thing. Instead of saying, you know what? No, actually, I know it's getting harder because I'm getting close, right? There is a difference in being able to know that. We got to trust our gut. We got to have that intuition. We got to seek wise counsel. We got to be willing to reflect. Those things help a lot along the way.
About how we can discern it. You said intuition, wise counsel. Like, let's say you're in your life. When you finished aerospace and pivoted to podcasting, like, talk to me about how you were able to discern, okay, this has been very fruitful in my life, but it's time that I let go and pursue something new. It's not just because it's getting hard. I'm not just letting myself off. This is actually what the right decision is for me. Where did that come from?
Yeah. Thank you for bringing this up. This is something that's a gift to get to talk about. I did 15 years, and I'd say that was like my real career. Like, that was my adult life. I did that from early 20s until mid 30s. The aerospace job started as a part-time receiving clerk position. I worked myself up to this C-suite level, which I'm super grateful for. I was the young guy. I was the only one with hair, or with at least hair that wasn't white, in the room. But it was a gift to be there. And I want to make sure that I always say the same time I talk about this. My last year there, my 15th year, it was almost exactly like year 16. I was like a few weeks away from like starting that. But that last year there, that was my best year I ever had at the company. I did not leave because it was hard. I did not leave because I was burnt out. I left because it was sacrificing the good, which was what that job was, for the sake of the potential great. I saw something different in podcasting. I was like, this could be great for me. The job I have here is good for me. I could retire at this job and do extremely well. Or there's something here that's very risky, but it could be great. And so first and foremost, it was kind of this idea of like weighing those things out. And really that happened at year 12 or year 13 in the business, at the aerospace company. It's when we went public. And I helped with that process. It was like I would never do a project like that ever again. It was a lot of work, but we saw it through. We made it happen. That's ultimately what kind of bumped me up to this C-suite level, was helping see that through. But when we went public and we had a board and we had shareholders, I realized I no longer was fulfilled by the work I was doing anymore. Again, being a curious guy naturally, like liking to try things, liking to be creative with the solutions we come up with, I wasn't allowed to do that anymore. There was red tape everywhere. And that's because it was a multi-billion-dollar company, and there has to be, right? Like, so we built it there on purpose. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I just realized I wasn't great at that anymore. I wasn't great at being the guy who wasn't allowed to flex creativity. And that's when I started, like, again, year 13, I'll never forget, I had a conversation with the CEO who's I reported to. And he was like, hey, man, you can't do stuff like this anymore. Like, your teams have to go now through this whole system, and it's this 6 months to a year process to get it approved versus just Alex saying, let's try it, right? It changed. And I'll never forget it. When I had that conversation with him that day, I left that office saying to myself, like, I think it's probably it's time for me to go, I think. And it took me years to kind of figure that out because, again, I was the person who's staying consistent and just kind of exploring things. And that's why I started doing a bunch of side hustles. Which, again, it's not bad to try a bunch of things. So from year 12 or 13, whatever it was in that business, till I left at 15 years, I was on the side just trying things while still applying myself to my main job, but just trying things. And so for me, now fast forwarding to like really answer your question, at year 15, when I decided to leave, when it was finally time, I had started PodMatch as a side hustle, and I started seeing it doing really well. So the first thing I did is I bust out an Excel spreadsheet. I love Excel, always have, always will. And I basically said, how long would it take for me to replace my salary that I currently have based off of how this little side hustle project's doing? And I basically came up with that terms. I'm like, how much savings do I have? What assets can I liquidate to extend that time? Like, how long will this be? Basically came up to it's going to take 2 years, and I have enough savings to make it that long. And I believe that this is the great, although I'm in the good right now. Am I willing to take this risk? The next thing I did after doing like a real assessment, like serious assessment, real heart to heart, I talked to my wife first. Scared to death of that conversation, by the way. That was really terrified. And then I talked to my dad, who is a lifelong entrepreneur. I talked to a few friends, and I really sat down and then did the reflecting work, the hard stuff, where you have to really think, Alex, are you good enough for this? Do you have what it takes? Like the stuff that like gets in your head when you're alone, right? That we want to drown out with music or whatever else we like to do, video games, whatever it is, right? Like the stuff you want to drown out. And I just got alone with myself, pen and paper. And that's ultimately gave me the courage to finally take that leap. And I'll never forget, December 7th, 2020 was my last day in corporate. And ever since then, I've been full-time entrepreneur with PodMatch. But it took a lot to do that. And I don't tell people to take that lightly, like take it seriously. And again, that last year there at that company, that was my best year. I left on really good terms. And I believe the way we end one season is the way we start the next. So I started PodMatch on a really good foot because of that.
Yeah, it's amazing how I love the idea that we end one season the way we start the next, because so many people do start to see something go negative and they let that happen. They let the entropy take control and they put all their effort into something else. But that momentum just carries over. One thing that you touched on that I really want to dive deep on is the thoughts that we have when we're alone. I've been thinking a lot recently. I've been thinking about my thoughts, which is ironic in itself. But the thoughts that I have and how they dictate my success, the when I'm alone, what do I truly think? Not what am I trying to think, but what am I actually telling myself? Is it I believe I'll be successful no matter what, or is it like you're you're not good enough for this, and all these things? And I find a mix of both. How have you helped control those thoughts, and how have they played a role in your success and your joy in your life?
Jack, first off, I'm just going to say, man, that I commend you on doing that. I think it's one of the most difficult things in life. And so many of us, we live in a world where people hate silence. They hate being bored. And we all have like our excuses and reasons for that. But at the end of the day, I think it's because we're scared of what's in our heads. Like we're scared to actually come to terms with what's going on inside of our heads. And like, I've been there. There was years of my life where the most terrifying thing for me was just pure silence, because I knew I'd be left alone with the scariest person I know, which is the person up in my head, right? And like that, to some people, like this sounds like crazy person talk, but the reality is, I think that we all need to have a healthy respect for our minds, and sometimes we forget that like we move so fast in today's world that we don't give our minds time to really process and to help make decisions, because we're just moving so quick, which is I call living a reactive lifestyle instead of proactive. It takes a lot to get comfortable sitting in silence. And I think the first thing that we have to do is actually put ourselves in a position to practice it. The way I've learned to do that is to just take pen and paper, like I mentioned earlier, but like I've got it sitting right next to me right now, pen and paper. And I'll go somewhere that inspires me. So like for me, that's the ocean. I live in Jacksonville, Florida, really close to the beach. I love it out there, right? Sometimes I'll just go out to the beach. I'll go out there with pen and paper, and that's all. And then I'm just alone with my thoughts. And whatever comes up, I usually write down. And I usually just start thinking. But I'm on my phone, like there's no music, and that's not like, oh, well, let me check this real quick, right? Like, because that's what ends up happening, right? Let me just scroll through real quick and see if any friends are out here while I'm here. Like, no, just none of that. Just I also take a water bottle, by the way, because I can't make it more than 10 minutes without drinking water. So, right there. But my point is, I just think that getting into this small practice is extremely healthy. And I think it's the best way to start coming to terms with what's in your mind. And there's going to be a lot of fears up there. There's going to be a lot of self-doubt. Like these are things that naturally come up because of the world that we live in. But I find the more comfortable we get with spending this time with ourselves, and the more we surround ourselves with people that can encourage that we can share our struggles with, the things that we're having a hard time with, the more that we can be transparent about what we're hearing ourselves think, the more reinforced we can become that we are more than we think. And here's an example. I remember I used to think I wasn't much of a visionary. And like I mentioned it somewhere. And one of my buddies, he's a close friend of mine, he just goes, "What?" He goes, "Dude, I've never met like a more visionary person than you in my life." And then he went on to like, here's like 10 examples, like right there in real time. The confidence that gave me when I left, the next time I was thinking alone and I had that thought come up of like, you're not a very visionary person. I was like, actually, no, I am. Like, let's rewire that thought. Like, why do I think that? And that's when you start writing things down. It's a practice that I think that we're losing in today's world, but if we want to be mentally as tough as we should, we want to live a really great life. Like we want to live a life of excellence, one that we can be grateful for. I think we have to start doing this and be intentional with it. It feels like time wasted because there's so many things we could be doing instead. But I'll tell you what, it's one of the most important practices in my life now.
That time alone in actually confronting your thoughts, because no matter what you're afraid of, no matter what you're afraid of what you'll think, maybe maybe you're imagining right, maybe you are mean to yourself, but once you confront that, that initial confrontation is the worst it's going to be. And you get through that, and then your mind starts to say, oh, it's not so bad. Oh, like you are doing the thing. You are actually, you're not hiding from it anymore. You're going head on, and you start to build that confidence from experience. And that is the type of confidence that is transferable to any domain of life. It's not just a one dimension, like, oh, I'm confident because I accomplished this task at work, or I accomplished this at school. It's a whole confidence that you're able to put anywhere in your life. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I do. And I actually think that you're probably closer to this than I am, though. Like, because you're recent graduate of high school. I think those are some of the toughest times. Like, not to sound like I'm way old. I guess I am a bit older than you, but whatever. But like, not to sound like an old guy here. But the point is, I actually think you could speak this better than I can. There was times that people said things about you, I'm sure, or that you were led to believe just based off of the culture of even school, right? The people around you. I actually, if you don't mind, I'd love to turn this over to you, Jack. Like, what's something you had to overcome? Like that you had to step back and realize that you needed to like step up and become who you were supposed to be versus what the world had for you.
A moment like that right now, very vividly, because in college, you're completely surrounded by people your age, thinking like people your age, you know? And I'm at a university with some very, very intelligent kids, but like I hear people going to these workshops, like this is our resume building workshop where we can earn a badge on LinkedIn, and and things like that, where it's just this is what people around me are thinking, and people around me are excited for the Friday to go party and the Saturday to go party, where that's everyone, and I really have to put in extra effort now to step out of that and remove myself from the situations that are normal, because I don't want to be normal. I want to be extraordinary. And to be extraordinary, you have to be exceptional, which means being the exception. I think that's one of the hardest things that I deal with, because I love people and I have great friends that choose different paths, you know? And so recognizing that it's okay to make different decisions and still have that relationship, especially at a young age where conformity is just so high. It's a difficult decision, but it's one that's completely worth it. I'm quickly interrupting just to let you know how grateful I really am that you're here tuning into the Grateful Podcast, that you're a member of this community. It's amazing just how much we've grown in the past year. I'm a freshman in college. I started this 10, 11 months ago, and we have 11,000 downloads. We have over 100 episodes, and I just want to keep that momentum going. So if you could help out with that by sharing this with someone that you think would really get value from it, leaving a review down below, or subscribing wherever you listen or watch, that would just mean the world to me. And send me a DM, a screenshot of you doing that on Instagram, so I can personally thank you, because this community means so much to me, and it is amazing to watch it keep growing and keep impacting people's lives. All right, let's get back to the episode.
Man, that's good, man. Thank you for letting me turn it over to you for a minute, Jack. I
Of
think that
course,
was
I love it.
really insightful, man. Like I think that what you said there, it's a conscious decision, right? And same thing that I just said, like spending that time reflecting is a conscious decision. You're never going to just fall into that and be like, oh, what do you know? I have pen and paper and I'm someone that inspires me and there's no phone around. Like that's never going to happen. Like this stuff is a conscious decision to do something different. And I love, you have a real practical example of what that looks like in your life right now. There are things that you're saying no to probably on a weekly basis that other people that are your close friends even, and people that you like to be around, because like I'm a people person too, that you're saying no to like certain things that are going on because you want to be something different. And that's gonna take you far. And I think that too many of us, we lose that the further we get in life. We step into conformity more and more because it feels weirder and weirder to not be a social norm, right? And I think that practicing that though, the way you are, man, I really respect that. So again, thank you for letting me turn on you for a minute there. I appreciate that.
And I think in your case, where you started reselling golf balls at age 10, when you're 10, you don't fully have all the neural circuitry developed to be comparing yourself in that way and to be thinking like, oh, you don't care as much about conforming to other people, right? And so you were able to set yourself in a way where from a young age you were different. And I imagine, and correct me if I'm wrong, that led you to be more okay with taking the risks, like when you quit your corporate job.
Yeah, it did. Like taking risk, I think is something that some people seem to have like a natural ability to do that. Like some of the best entrepreneurs I know, they're the riskiest people I've ever met in my life. You know, like I'm like, man, they're not scared of anything, right? Like I think there's probably a healthy balance. I've always erred more on the cautious side, but I've learned through experiences like that and doing I did like a technology startup in the real estate space before I got into my big corporate job, and that didn't work out because the economy crashed. I just learned to take risks, and that's why though I make calculated risks, because I'm not always the person just go out there just like, yeah, sure, I'm all in. Again, some of the best entrepreneurs I know though, that's what they do. They go all in on everything, and I'm always like, are you crazy? They're like, yep, right? Like they just, but it's kind of like in their DNA. But the reality is, if you think about um, I can't remember who made this quote. I wanted to say it was John Maxwell, but he talks about like failing forward is one of his topics, right? Like, hey, you're always going to fail, but you keep on failing forward and it keeps on rolling into your next thing. Another quote, which I don't know who said this, but the idea is like, I'm really lucky because I put myself in position to be lucky more often, right? So it just means I'm trying more than everybody else. That's why I'm luckier than them, because I give myself the opportunity to be lucky more often. So, and I think that too many of us, yeah, we kind of just get like a little bit, I guess, gun shy, or just, again, you don't know what's going to happen, and it could mess everything up in life. But the reality is life is really long. Like, I'm not telling you make bad investments and do long things, but like I know everyone says the opposite, life is short, but the reality is it is long. Like if I told you, hey Jack, let's reconnect in 7 years, you'd be like, that's a really long time, right? Like that is a long time. But the reason I say that is because you can always rebuild. Like it's okay to take a risk. It doesn't mean your life's over. You're never going to get another shot. You're going to get a lot of chances to try a lot of things. Be willing to take a risk. And I think especially when you're younger, take more risks. Give it a shot. Again, have people in your corner. Don't do stupid stuff, right? But like be willing to take a calculated risk here and there. And I think that really helps you develop that muscle of being willing to step out more.
Malcolm Gladwell.
Sorry, it broke up again. What'd you say?
Here's by Malcolm Gladwell.
Yeah.
Yeah, where like those people, it's the mix of luck and skill, right? And the more skilled or hard work, and the more hardworking people are in the area to become lucky more often, just as you said. Like Bill Gates, he was very skillful and he was lucky because he took advantage of all the opportunities he had in front of him. He could have said no to the ability to work at that computer club or use that computer that no one else really had access to. But everything lined up, but it's because he was living fully and taking advantage of the skill set that he had that set him up to be lucky. And I truly do believe that all of us will have that lucky moment at least once in our lives. And if we're fully able to take advantage of the opportunities that we do have, and we're always looking for that way to better ourselves and get ourselves towards our goal, we'll be able to take advantage of that lucky moment. It's just about that consistency and not letting that doubt get to your head.
Yeah, this actually reminds me of a previous episode of your show that I really enjoyed. I'm blanking on her last name, but her name was Jess, and it was episode 88, aired on July 19th, 2025. And anyway, the whole idea was like, it was talking about like achieving more is not the answer. Like just always going after more. And something Jess talked about was like, and I love this. She said, you don't always have to have it all planned out. And I think that that's a really important thing, because if we have everything planned out, we're going to miss real opportunities. Like if before I started PodMatch and before I tried starting all the little side hustles, right, being curious once again and getting out there just trying things, if instead of doing that, I just said, you know what, I'm going to quit this job, I'm going to go work at this company because I can go further and do it that way, I would have missed the opportunity to do all of this, right? But instead, I just didn't have it all planned out. As Jess said in that episode, like just just acknowledge where you are today in the step. Just look at your next step and then just focus on that and keep on going. And I find that that's often we can see like something that's like maybe off the regular path or trail. Because if you look at my career, right, like golf ball, selling stuff on eBay, I didn't even mention that earlier, but that's something else I loved to do as a kid, right? Doing some tech startup stuff in the real estate space, moving into aerospace, and then quitting corporate after 15 years to become an entrepreneur and start all the way over. Like you're like, wait, what? That doesn't make any sense, right? But the reality is, we can't be so married to our plans that we're not willing to be flexible. I'm having more fun and enjoying this in a way that I never even enjoyed corporate. And I love that. It's just totally different. And this isn't why I do it, but I'm making more money now than I ever. I mean, I could have been the CEO of one of these companies. And I wouldn't even make a fraction of what I make now. And for me, the money's not what it's about. But it's like, cool. I'm having fun, more fun than I ever have, and I'm bringing in money that really is going to be great for generations to come and the people that I love to give to and serve around. So anyway, that happened because I didn't have everything planned out. I was willing to just take one step at a time to look for the opportunities around me, to be mindful of those things. And I find that when you are kind of position yourself that way, it's more fun anyway, to just kind of live in the moment. It can be really healthy.
I think a lot of that comes from an innate trust in yourself. You have to trust that no matter what you do, it will work out. This belief that you have in yourself. Have you always had this belief or this trust that you're going to succeed, that you will end up joyful?
I wish. I mean, I think I got a really I think I got a needed wake up call. So when I was a kid, the golf ball thing worked out. Selling stuff on eBay worked out. Doing that technology startup and real estate startup, even my initial investments in real estate, like all that stuff was working really well. I felt like I couldn't fail. And then 2008 happened where everything crashed. I had all my eggs in the real estate basket at that point. And man, like I hit absolute rock bottom at that point in my life. Absolute rock bottom. I lost all faith in myself, all courage. I was dealing with anxiety. I was dealing with depression. I felt like I had nobody in my life because the friends I surround myself with are other like high achievers, right? The people that are going to make it. And whenever any of us do bad, we disappear because you don't want anyone else to know, right? Like just nothing in my life was going well. Like I legitimately rock bottom. That's when I got into that aerospace job as a part-time receiving clerk. And what that meant was I was breaking down boxes and taking out people's trash. From a guy who was doing really well to like really bad, like super in debt, couldn't even afford to go to school, and just had like a little part-time job just to like try to be able to get food. And so that destroyed my courage, wrecked me completely. But I actually look at that moment, that time, as the best time in my life for me to grow into the man that I needed to become. I really was just a boy who was getting lucky all the time. Like things were just set up for me for some reason, right? That was my first thing that made me wake up and realize I'm not invincible. And I actually have to have some character. And the way I put it, like, yes, there was a real estate wreck, but my giftedness took me further than my character could. And I think we need to focus on the opposite. Our character needs to be able to take us further than our giftedness can. Like we have to have the character internal. We have to have the way we've built our lifestyle, the way that we just treat others, the way we love people. All these things have to be the true foundation because at some point our giftedness runs out. And for me, I didn't have the foresight to see that the industry was going a wrong way. I put 110% of what I had into an industry that was about to crash. I had no way of knowing it. And granted, most people didn't, but I was going in the wrong direction. If the real estate market didn't crash, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. And I'd probably be some jerk somewhere, maybe making money, but probably super unhappy, right? Like I found what really mattered in life in that time, and it really turned me around. But it did wreck me. Like I had to build all that back. I lost all faith in myself, all courage in myself. I didn't think I was cut out to do any of it. And that's one of the reasons I even stayed in that corporate job initially, which I'm grateful I did, but I didn't think I could make it on my own anymore.
My guess about this theme that I see among the most successful people, and it's that the objectively worst moment in your life is the one that you're the most grateful for. So, at what point did this moment that from the outside looks so, so just saddening, terrible, whatever adjectives, like it just all collapsed in, right? But it's what sprouted, that collapse sprouted this amazing, abundant life you live now. At what point were you able to shift your perspective and say, I am grateful for that, even though it caused me so much pain.
Yeah. First off, it was a fast decline and a slow ascend back up, right? So like overnight, I went from I'm doing great to like uh-oh, right? And then it was a slow climb back up to being able to rebuild confidence, stuff like that. For me, the real defining moment though was like I got um I followed Jesus, and that's when I made that decision. So like I became a believer, followed Jesus, started getting the Bible. Like I got really serious in my faith. And that was the first time in my life I ever did anything like that. And I will just say with confidence, like that created the entire foundation for the man that I am today. Everything I do comes from that foundation. And so for me, like I didn't like become a pastor or anything like that, right? Like I just learned like from these principles, like, hey, this is a way to live life that I have not ever experienced or explored. And when I started doing that, it started making me grateful for wherever I was. And so for me, like I wasn't grateful to be in a part-time job taking out trash, breaking down boxes for people, right? Like I wasn't, but I shifted that perspective because of my newfound faith. Is like, you know what? I'm going to do this better than anyone else ever does. You know, like I'm going to do it, love in my heart, joy in my heart. Like I'm going to make it happen. And long story short, that's what shifted it, and that's what started bringing me back to a different place. So it's what got me promoted so many times, is just having that different mindset about life. Like I'm grateful to be here, and I found that I actually really enjoyed that job. Like I didn't let myself think that because my ego got in the way, but as soon as I pushed that aside, again, it took a little bit of time to do that. I was like, this is actually a lot of fun. I enjoy this, and there is room for improvement. I'm going to be creative, and I'm going to explore different ideas here and see what we can do differently. I got invited to be a full-time employee there pretty quick. And it's because I just thought differently than anybody else. I smiled when I did the work that no one else wanted to do. And so for me, like that was, again, that it was like my faith that started that whole process. And from there, it was just like applying those principles in my life. And that's the same foundation I have today. But I would have never built it if it weren't for that moment. As you said, like so many of successful people talk about how they have that moment. And that's what it was for me.
Right now, I'm guessing you think there's no way it could get worse than that. Maybe that's not, but like you think about that as being your rock bottom, right? And you've seen rock bottom, so I think it puts less fear in you of what taking risks or what the rock bottom would look like if things didn't go as well, which allows you to proceed much more confidently. Once you've seen what the worst could look like, I think you're a lot less afraid of what the worst is. Just as when you're so afraid of your thoughts, but you're always blocking them out and you're always avoiding them, once you confront them, you're like, oh, this is terrible. And then you get over that. You're like, oh, I guess I didn't have to be so afraid all the time, right?
Yeah, I mean, what's the worst that could happen? I think it can be a healthy question, and sometimes, um, again, come from the industry I came from. When people are talking about jumping out of airplanes, what's the worst that can happen? Really bad is what can happen, right? But like when it comes to our lives, you like trying new things, exploring things. Like, what's the worst that can happen? Like, I remember one of the side hustles I decided I wanted to try to do was I liked web design. I don't know why, just on the side. So I was like, oh, let me try building websites for people. What's the worst that can happen? Someone can fire me, right? Like that's it. And so I had one client doing that, and I realized I did not like building websites for other people. I like building for me, not for other people. So like, but I learned that, and the worst that happened was I got short paid on something, and it was my first and only client in that space. I was like, great, this was a fun experiment. I'm not doing that ever again, right? But like that was the worst that could really happen, and that's okay. And I think that yeah, I think that's a really healthy question, because often the worst that can happen isn't actually all that bad, if it's even bad at all.
About putting everything to death, which is very, very extreme. And people often, I think, look at him weird when he says that, but I know what he means, where it's like, okay, the worst thing the reason I'm fearing this right now is because when I was my genetics think I'm still in some tribe thousands of years ago where if I do this thing and people perceive it as weird, then I'm going to be left out and eaten by some saber-toothed tiger. And it's like, okay, cool. That's a little comforting to know that that's where that fear's coming from, you know? Because I'm probably not going to die because of this decision. Something would have to go terribly wrong if a business decision or risk in my life led me to my death. Um, Odds are that's an irrational fear, and I can get over that and I can pursue it. Or I can say, okay, maybe now that I'm thinking about this more rationally, that's not something I want to do. But going to that worst case, I think definitely allows us to think about stuff with a lot more clarity.
Yeah, and this goes back to the whole idea of reflecting, which I know I keep on going back to, but I just think it's so important. I think that if you want to like live a truly grateful life and a life that is extraordinary, it's going to take that time reflecting. That's when you determine like what's the worst that can happen. I think that's a healthy question to ask yourself, right? Like when you're reflecting on something that maybe you just want to try for fun. Maybe it's somebody you want to date, right? Like I can't bring myself to ask this person out, right? Like what's the worst that can happen? And you're like, oh, it's actually just them saying no, which is not any different than where I am right now, right? Like, I think that it's just, again, it's a healthy practice for us to do. And I think that if we want the most out of life, we have to be willing to be very, very intentional. And same with work. We got to be very intentional. And I think asking ourselves these questions, these very deep questions that no one else is asking themselves, is what separates us.
Pivoting to kind of what you're doing right now, it seems like you've been very clear on the mission that you have moving forward with PodMatch, podcasting, putting $1 million back in the podcaster's hands by the end of the year. From my perspective, from the outside perspective, it seems to have been this opinion seems to be shared by many people as well. What you're doing seems to be very intentional and also in a very good spot right now, right? Like podcasting is booming. And I wonder from your perspective why you think this industry is growing in the way that it is. Why is this industry in a time when so many people are going online and scrolling on short form content? Why is long form podcast something that so many people are attracted to?
So first of all, it's great to be in this industry. I think it's a good time to be in podcasting. Like whenever I look at it, like you said, it is booming. So 11x and then foreseeable future. Like that's just a really exciting thing to be part of, right? The reason I believe it's growing the way it is that it's more of an escape than the quick scroll on social media. Like, listen, there will never be a podcast with numbers like what people get on TikTok or on Instagram. Like that's just the reality of it. But it's a quick scroll past, right? Or like something you're doing when you're just wanting to be mindless. What I'm finding is that people that are going to podcasting as listeners, because that's really what drives this whole thing, right? The growth is happening because people are listening to these podcasts. It's where they're actually going to get away from maybe just the norm of scrolling. Like, I actually want to better myself. I actually want to intentionally laugh. I want to learn something new. People are showing up to long form because they feel that there's a little bit more depth to it. And they're not wrong. Like there is a lot more depth to it. And so it's also the other thing about podcasting I think is like so beautiful. It is the least intrusive form of media that you can consume. What I mean by that is it doesn't demand your hands and your eyes and your ears. All it demands is your ears. And the way most of us learn, like most people, it's been proven, learn better when they're doing something other than just sitting stagnant. And so for most people, because it's only requiring your ears, it's in earbuds, right? You're taking a walk, you're at the gym, you're cooking, you're cleaning, you're doing something else like some sort of chore, and you're retaining so much more information, so much higher level that you can actually do something with, right? Even if it's just laughing. Maybe you're figuring out how to be funny yourself. I don't know, whatever it might be if it's a comedy podcast. But regardless, it's not taking up every part of your life. It's not demanding all of your attention. It's just demanding the part that wants to learn, the part that wants to better itself, the part that wants to get out of a situation that they're in. And I think that that's why we're seeing it do so well, is because there's never really in history been anything quite like it. It's actually really unique if you think about the opportunity as a listener, like what it can do for you.
And I didn't know that people learn so well while doing other things. That's really interesting. To pivot back to where we were talking about being in alignment and reflecting with yourself, why is podcasting the thing that fulfills you? Why is podcasting and helping other podcasters your purpose?
Yeah. So when I got into this space, again, one of those side hustle things I decided to try, I started blogging first. And I really liked writing, but it was hard for me to get a lot out, right? Like it was a side hustle. I was still being faithful with my full-time job at that point. And so I was like 600 to 800 words. I'm like, that's a lot of work. But then I discovered this podcasting thing. I'm like, oh, I could speak for 20 minutes. And that's like, I don't know how many words that is, but it's a lot, right? Like, even if I'm only speaking for 5 to 10 to 15 minutes, which is what I was shooting for, it was so much more. And I was getting a lot better feedback from it. And I fell in love with it, like just as a listener, as a host. And that's what made me realize I wanted to get into the space. So I went from doing that to like finding conferences about podcasting. I'm like, well, I've learned a little bit. Can I speak? Can I help? Can I show up? And so I started showing up, speaking, helping. And then at one point when I got into the community, I just realized I love these people. Like they are just some of the greatest people I've ever met. Like they have this abundance mindset. We share so many ideas about life and how we want to help other people. Like that's our common trend. I loved that. And so I set out one day. It was actually I was in Orlando, Florida. It was the beginning of 2020, just before the world shut down. It's on stage. There's about 2,000 people in the room. And I just said at the end of my talk, hey, if you'd be willing to talk to me for like 2 minutes, I'd love to give you a hug, love to meet you. And I had a lot of people line up. I had pen and paper in hand. And my one question to all of them was, hey, what's something you're struggling with as a podcaster right now? What's one thing you're struggling with as a podcaster right now? And I talked to a lot of people. But when I wrote down the same thing 100 times, I realized that's what I want to do for this industry. It's been good to me. It's my passion. I'm in the community. Now I want to solve a problem for this community. And so I went home with the idea of PodMatch, which more or less is a way that connect podcast guests and hosts for interviews. It works very similar to a dating app, but instead of connecting people for dates, guests from podcast interviews. And that's exactly what everyone was describing they were looking for. They wanted to streamline that whole process. So I went home and over 3 months, me and two other partners, we built this solution out for podcasters. I got into this because I was passionate about it myself. I loved the community, so I wanted to help solve a problem for them. And that was ultimately the solution I came up with.
As well. I've definitely met some very cool people on PodMatch. Yeah, it's a great purpose to connect people that are doing good to do more good. You've really maximized your ripple effect, which I think is really, really, really cool because the effect that you've had on all these podcasters, those podcasters now bring them to their audiences, and hopefully their audiences bring them to their circles in their lives. So it's really cool to think about the number of people that you're impacting on a daily basis just by helping some people connect and find people to talk to.
Yeah, it's a gift and it's a blessing. And I don't take it lightly. I'm very grateful to be here. I feel I've done very little to deserve it. I don't want to just say it's all luck, but I am just really. I don't know how to say it other than I'm honored to be here. Like it's a really cool thing, and every day I really do my best to remember to reflect on the fact that like what I'm doing is a gift to me, and it's a blessing to be a blessing, right? So like I'm just out here doing my best every day to lead this community well and to serve it really well. Because I do think that although podcasting has growth in its future, I do think there's some things that could take it a wrong direction. I want to make sure I'm part of the solution to ensure that certain parts of it, at the very least, go the right way to really support the people that are in the industry that are doing the work, right? The podcasters themselves. I don't have much else to add than that. Then seriously, just I'm honored to be here, which maybe sounds silly, but like I really am. I'm just grateful.
Too, because you never want to take it for granted because what you've worked your entire life for. I know you said you don't think you've done little to be here, but I mean, you've been working your entire life to be here, even if it's not in direct ways. That's one of the coolest things. That's one of the main themes of our conversation today. Everything ended up leading you to being here. All those little detours, all of those decisions and trusting your intuition, it led you to be here, fulfilling your purpose in an industry that's booming, grateful to wake up and have a ripple effect and impact people's lives. And that's what's so cool. And I think, yeah, just never ever take that for granted. I know every day I get to wake up and I go to class by the Tower Bridge in London, which is like there are always tourists there. My building, I can always see the Tower Bridge from the window. And every time I walk past it, I go, never take this for granted. Because so many people are so excited when they see it for the first time. I know I was. And it's always cultivating that excitement and reminding yourself that whatever your reality is, it's someone else's dream.
Man, it's so good. Jack, I got to say, I've been interviewed a lot over the years. I think we were talking about before we started recording, but I think I've been on 700 shows as a guest or something like that. But you got one of the best heads on your shoulder that anyone have ever talked to, man. You've done really good work, and I believe you're still just getting started. But I just wanted to point that out real quick here on the podcast. Don't edit that one out. Keep that in here for everyone to hear. The reality is, I think you're going places, man. And I really respect the way that you learn and grow yourself, even through your own podcast. I think the first listener is the host, right? I really believe that to be a good podcaster, you got to have that mindset of that. But man, you got something really going good here, man. I'm proud of you. That's great.
That means a ton to me. I really appreciate it. I'm really glad we got to have this conversation.
Yeah, me too, man. Thank you.
Everything, go find Alex, PodMatch, everything in the description below. Thank you, Alex.
Thanks again, man. Appreciate you.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Grateful Podcast with Jack Wagoner. I'm just so happy that you made it this far, got value out of this. And do me a favor, take a screenshot of where you're at right now and tag me on Instagram in your story, and I'll repost it. And thank you personally, because it really is amazing that you took this time out of your day to cultivate more joy into your life and learn more and improve yourself. And if you think that anyone else in your life could get benefit from this, make sure to send it over to them so that we can keep making more impact on more people's lives. Now, if you enjoyed this, I release episodes every Monday, solo episodes, and then every Wednesday with an amazing guest. And my goal is to keep getting these guests to be even more amazing. Not that the ones we've had aren't, but just even more amazing and make a bigger impact on you guys. So if you want to help me do that, then leaving a review wherever you listened is huge. All right. Hope you guys have a great week. I'll see you on Monday and Wednesday for the next episodes of the Grateful Podcast. Stay grateful.